You ever watch these shorts? You've probably seen me have a few videos that have these shorts in it here lately, and it's where somebody's taken just a clip or maybe a few different clips and put it together real quick and shove it inside of a minute or two here, and that they run them in a special way here on YouTube now. When this came out, a long time ago, months ago now, whenever they were first talking about it and sent out the thing to the people that are the people who are making videos and so on, I thought I might be able to make some of these, but it would just be like, here's this, here's that, here's that, here's that, and watch my video on my channel, dink, and get out the door. But most people that saw my videos know that I don't even feel like that's a decent way to try to do anything. I don't know, it'd be almost like a commercial for my site, whereas most of these people are trying to show you something different. And I've seen a lot of these here lately, and some of them have actually given me ideas for videos. Some of them that totally go out in left field too, where a guy shows this and this and this and this, and I'm like, oh wow, okay, you've got me. Now you're making connections. Let's see if you can finish this thing off, and I'd really like for just an inkling of something new that I don't know to add to a puzzle piece, right? And right at the end, all of a sudden it goes, therefore, there was 30-foot tall giants living in it. And I'm like, God. And I just lower my head, and then the video starts over again and stuff, and you wonder what the hell all this is about. Other times you get something where they're showing you in a modern time what's going on, because I do history. I get a lot of things that are about that by some history channels, and because of that, I get some of that riffraff. But believe it or not, even in the riffraff, you can find somebody that's found a puzzle piece that nobody else has found. Here we're going to look at this lady. Her name is Callie Fontanilla, and she was actually asked to be the speaker at a YAF youth conference to speak about some systemic racism, and I don't think it quite went the way that they thought they would in a modern day. I don't know if you're aware of the amount of pandering people try to do and have this narrative and everything else, but it's gotten past disgusting and just open, just blatant, as if it wasn't a long time ago. But she's going to talk about something, and the fact that people have kept trying to show systemic racism. They go, well, show me where this can't happen, or whenever this can't happen, or women with feminism will try to say that, and they go, show me that, and then they can't, and then they get mad and walk off, or so on like that. You may see in some of these other videos. But here's one that everybody wants. Here, if somebody could just show you some systemic racism in America, well, she's found it, but you're not going to like where she found it at. Let's go. It says they do that now at the bottom right below my ticker here. That's the last word she said. We're going to watch the whole thing, and then the last word she said again. I'm going to try to interject as little as possible, maybe a couple of times in the middle.
There is discrimination happening in America right now, legal systemic racism discrimination, but it's not necessarily happening against brown folk. It's happening against Asians and whites on the books.
And it's a fact. And that's why she fought against Proposition 16. If you've heard any of these weird pandering things or critical race theories or anything else that's been going on about this type of stuff, because she knows that, hold on, if you're going to try to make everything fair, you've got something that's lopsided in her own favor here. It caused her to think a bunch of odd things. Let's go.
That's why I fought against Prop 16, because for one, we don't need the standards lowered. Those of us with brown skin, we don't need standards lowered. We can meet the standards, so please don't do that to us, okay?
Well, we would also probably ask in that endeavor that we don't lower the standards of Caucasians that are leading science and everything else, because that would be self-detrimental. And to try to lower those standards to make it to where other people could get higher grades because it's a less of a standard, almost stepping back a grade, if you will, or a notch, whenever we definitely should be making another notch or step in the other direction and more knowledge. I don't know, get to the point where you don't learn algebra in 7th grade if you're advanced at math, but you learn it in 6th. And so on. See if we can't get some more really decisive knowledge into our kids that can help us in the future that we won't even get to experience. Isn't it beautiful? What a wonderful world. Well, don't lower the standards, she's saying. And what's incredible, and we'll talk about it here later, is that the standards were already lowered, and in fact a couple of times here. And actually other things have been lowered in a way, like the standard of where we used to refer to somebody as being as a mentally challenged or retarded level, if you will, which is a non-accepted word I understand nowadays, but that's the way it was then, or a word that was used, which seems very derogatory nowadays. I guess you say mentally challenged or whichever, Down syndrome. I mean, no, well, it's not that. It's, what? Well, we can't seem to define anything anymore because of sensitive words. One of the first little things I learned when I was a kid was that words will never hurt me and stuff, but gosh, I don't know who forgot that song. Let's continue.
And secondly, it's just, it creates resentment. When I went and got my 4-year degree, and then I went and got my master's, we sat around a room, and this was at UC Santa Cruz, which is like a total liberal, horrible college.
So she got her 4-year degree and then went on to get her master's. And then something dawned on her, and it really didn't dawn on her till later. She's going to explain that to you in a minute. But she says UC Santa Cruz, which was more a liberal college and really horrible. Well, she sees it now looking back at it, but being an impressionable youth who didn't know anything and out on the world and who knows, away from your family and stuff, started thinking that, well, all these kids are thinking this way, and you try to go with this idea and this push narrative. It's hilariously sad whenever you take college kids nowadays and these guys come up to them and ask them questions, and you can tell they're all just freaked out over all this stuff and agendas pushed on them and everything else, versus a common human. You know, you can take somebody who's 30 years old and they've got a much more better grasp on the way things are, but they keep shoving this stuff up kids, which is bad. But in the same videos, you can see this guy coming up. I forget what his name is now, but he'll ask him any questions like, how many states are there in the United States? And somebody will say, 22, and he'll be like, yes. And, you know, like they really got it right and everything. It's terrible, where you can imagine if they don't know this and they don't know that, what is it that they don't know? And that could really cause a problem in this idea of way you look at people. If you know that they don't know certain things, it makes you really wonder, well, what do you know? What do you don't know? Everything. And this resentment idea came upon herself. And I'm going to let her finish here.
And we sat around the room and we shared our GPAs. Mine was the lowest. And there was a white guy that said, oh, you got in here because you're a black woman. And I got really mad. I was like, because I was actually left-leaning at the time. This was like 10 years ago or 12 years ago. And I was like, why would you say that? Blah, 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 blah. And now I look back and I'm like, you know what? Maybe it was because of the color of my skin, because they do that now.
So now we've come full circle and they do that now and it starts over. But does it have to keep starting over? You see, because what she's kind of referring to now that she knows, but it's the secret that's not spoken in this video, if even in front of these people, is there was this thing created called affirmative action. And affirmative action basically made it to where you're going to get higher grades than you even get. And if you really just show up, they'll try to push you through school and say that you graduated. And then it doesn't end there, because there are all these things in college where these colleges who, trying to pander and make sure they don't seem that they're racist, try to get as many black people as they can in it. And so they actually take somebody who's got a low GPA that doesn't even qualify. That if a white person did it, they would be like, I'm sorry, maybe try a community college, but this doesn't happen to them because of this. And this is under the Supreme Court right now too, so I'm kind of interested what happens on it, because just like she's explained to you here, the systemic racism is against Asians and whites. Well, what's she talking about? She's talking about school and the way it works, because Asians and whites are both given a lower number on their SATs. And you'd think, oh, well, let's try to even it out. And on top of that, blacks are given a huge number up on their SATs. So all of a sudden it's weird, but you could be qualifying on the edge of going to Harvard, but not quite, or maybe, and then they knock the number down and you don't qualify. But then they don't qualify even for a community college, perhaps, or barely above. But then with their bump, they get close enough to a Harvard where you were kind of at, but because of them trying to get more black people or any ethnicity whatsoever to try to match up to a number to pander, they end up accepting that person and it goes to Harvard and so on. I didn't go to a college like that. I mean, UT and ACC, by the way, but when we were in school, there was this girl that in calculus, just to mention here on how I guess I saw a little of this once. Here's a picture. A girl was in our calculus class, and a few weeks into it, she was talking, and at one point we kind of got into it, kind of helped her, tried to help her, and we even took and broke the equation down, and then she couldn't do it, and not to be insensitive, one of the other guys said something about, well, you understand this, that, and the other, and you had algebra 2 or whatever, right? And she's like, no, I didn't do good in algebra. And it's like, how could you end up in this class and all this? And I always thought after the fact that maybe him saying that made her kind of quit the class. But actually we had, we're a third of the way into it, and she's just failing left and right. And shortly after, she just quit showing up in class and she ditched it, I guess. So odd thing too about this is one of the other guys that was in the group there that had actually said something when she didn't show up, and the guy asked for her name a couple of times, and they said, hey, did she flake? And it's because he knew that in another advanced cut course over here, she had flaked too. And he thought it was weird that she was taking that course or even this calculus course that we were taking, because none of that really had to be in her field of study whatsoever. And one of the other guys said whenever he was trying to help her, she started crying one day whenever she said something about, well, not crying, but broke down a little bit, saying that girls don't even need this. Why are they trying to do this? I don't know, kind of thing to her. And so he felt like he knew that she was out the door on the way of it anyhow. I don't know. Yeah, that's enough on that, I guess. But the idea that someone would need that much propping up to be able to try to say that everything's equal is really a problem. And then the fact that the other side of the fence, people have to be knocked down also. They want to knock down yours all that way. They want to knock theirs up and yours down and try to even things out. And that kind of shows you something else too. People say, oh, it was because of slavery and this, that, and the other. Don't start pandering. Look into the reality of things, people. Oh, well, that's racist. No, it's not. That's reality. It's an amazing thing you ought to look into instead of sitting here pandering or coming up with all this BS or believing a lot of BS that people tell you about stuff without looking into it. Look into something like Aslar, man, and you'll find at 4400 BC, there's people that just showed up on the planet. Well, what were they just before that? They have those fossils too. It's a Homo erectus species still, well after the last ice age. So it's not even just that they were a primitive type people, but there's a radical difference. But everybody's so busy pandering, trying to say everybody's the same, rather than exploring our differences and or exploiting them in a way that helps everybody out. Everybody's trying to mush a stew into one type of flavor, and then all you do is eat this mush that tastes like blah. It's not, it takes away from the spice of life. But then also, is there some systemic racism? Well, yeah, towards whites. And stupidly, it looks like whites did it towards themselves because they realized that it's this far off. Well, listen, if it's this far off, we need to do something else than what we're doing. And I think that's the reason it's in front of the Supreme Court right now, on the idea that this isn't right and it's nowhere even. So how could we possibly even it out? Well, how about if you just take all that off and everybody goes with what they really did? Well, see how that happens to, if you take off the lie and the screw up and the cheat, then it ends up being radically different, and then that's not going to be right. So what can we end up doing? And with the new people that have been put in the Supreme Court, and that one lady that can't even tell you what a woman is, I just wonder what reaction we're going to get out of it whenever this finally comes across the Supreme Court. They said it was going to be doing it soon, about a year ago, and haven't heard crap since. Have you? Let me know down in the comments or what you think about this idea, and if this is racist. Well, it's pinpointing one and doing it and pitting against the other and doing this, and a cheat's put in the position and so on like that. This actually, if it was anybody else or white people that had this going on, you'd be like, aha. But if you find it the other way, somehow we're too busy to pander to turn around and go, uh-huh. Isn't it odd? Peace.